evening, everybody. This is Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. My name is Huge Pop. Down below is Rico. Tonight, I am so blessed and to have the master of a spine buster, the enforcer, the ECW original. He has held titles in many promotions. It is none other than C.W. Anderson. Welcome to the show, my guy.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. I love that music on the intro, man. It always gets me hyped up.
That's pretty gnarly. That's pretty sick.
Yeah.
As you can see, we got a match in the background, and to start it off, I wanted to start it off differently, but you shared some interesting information about this match that we're watching in the background. Could you just elaborate on what's going on? That
was the first show back at the ECW arena after ECW folded, and it was Shane Douglas's Hardcore Homecoming. We were the first match. We were the first ones to come through the curtain, Simon Diamond and myself, and we wrestled Chris Chetty and Mikey Whipwreck that night. So many good matches on that show. It was when we come through the curtain, I remember we get in the ring and Simon telling me when they get in and the match get ready starts, he says it gets no hotter than it does right now. And we're not talking about the heat. We're talking about the electricity in the room. He said we might as well go home right now. But it was easily, now I know I elaborated and said it was like 130 some degrees in there, but it was probably 110 in that building that night, easily.
Can you fans understand what he just said? 110 degrees.
In the building. Because you're here several times during commentary that night, Joey Styles goes, damn, it's hot in here. And it was scalding in that building.
Damn.
You hit that triple digits, and that's just, that's too warm, man.
I've wrestled some outside shows. A couple years ago, I wrestled for Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore, and we were up in Virginia, West Virginia. And it was July, and it was a black canvas, and Hurricane Helms and I opened the show, and it was so hot. It was one of those, when you hit the mat, you immediately came up because you could hear your skin burn when it hit the mat.
No thanks.
But it was that hot that night, man. But man, the electricity, our adrenaline was running through the roof. So when we got done, we're sitting in the back outside, pouring sweat, drinking a beer, trying to cool ourselves down.
Yes, sir. I don't care if it's a warm beer, ice cold beer, man.
I wouldn't care. Yes, it wouldn't have mattered. Water.
That's right. Absolutely. So it's known that you were not a fan of wrestling when you were growing up. Can you explain how you hated it? Is there a reason why?
I don't know. I was 13, 14 at the time before I kind of fell in love with it. But before that, I was a Saturday Night Live guy. I watched Saturday Night Live. That was during the time of Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, those guys. And I wasn't a wrestling fan because everybody knows my baseball background that has followed me throughout the years. A great, whatever you want to call it, a baseball player. So I was more into baseball. But my little brother Kevin, he's 3 years younger than I. He was the wrestling fan. And NWA was hot in our area because we grew up right outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, and pretty much the same area I'm still at right now. And it was a July day, like July 4th or 5th, 1984 or 5. The match is on YouTube. And he, that Saturday morning, it came on Saturday morning, and he looked at me and he said, look, watch wrestling with me, but just one time. Just watch this one match. He said, if you don't like it, I'll never ask you again. This was the little brother looking up to the big brother. So I was like, okay, I'll sit down with you and watch it. So we sat down, and the match was the Rock and Roll Express versus Uncle Ivan Koloff, and Crusher Khrushchev. And it was the day the Rock and Roll Express won when Ricky Victory rolled Ivan Koloff for the belt, and they won the belts. I think it was the first time they came into NWA when they won them. If my memory serves, I could be wrong. And I remember they went in and us jumping around. We're little kids. We're just jumping around because the Americans, the Rock and Roll Express, had just defeated the Russians. And I was hooked from there on out.
About 14.
Never
15.
thought I would be. I was 14, depending on the year, because I was born in 71. So I was possibly 13, 14, 15, somewhere along in there.
Right.
And I never thought I'd be into wrestling. I always thought baseball was going to be my career. I even did it when I was like 16 years old in a guy's backyard and had a ring and did it for like a few months. And my baseball coach made me stop. He's like, you got a gift. He said, you'll be going pro. He said, you need to stop before you hurt yourself.
Nice. So can we elaborate on your baseball career?
Yeah.
Are there any good? Did you go to college and play ball? Did you?
I went to college I come out of high school. I had like Carolina, Duke. Who was the team from Florida? It was I think Florida State came up and scouted me. But the summer leagues I was playing, and I didn't know the San Diego Padres were there scouting our pitcher. His name was Steve Jones, and they clocked me because I was a catcher, 170 pounds, 175 soaking wet, and they clocked me throwing from my knees at 90 miles an hour harder than he could throw it to me off the mound, throwing down a second. That's, I was your typical white catcher. I couldn't run for nothing, but I had a good bat. I had I always say a 6'2" and a 20 speed. So I wasn't very fast, but I was very intelligent, and I had a cannon. I loved showing my arm off, picking guys off first, second, and third from my knees, because Benito Santiago was my idol. So I loved showing my arm off, and then my mom being the mother hen she was, I look back on it now, but at the time she told me, you need to go to college. You need to go to college. The pros will always be there. Hindsight 2020, I should have went to the pros because they wanted to sign me, send me to Arizona, and it was like $20,000 and a $2,000 signing bonus. You got to figure this is 1989 before the Latin explosions of catchers come through, because it was Tony Pena, it was Benito Santiago, and Sandy Alomar Jr. was his backup, and there wasn't really many other Latin catchers. So I turned it down, went to college in Columbus, Ohio, where my uncle was living and working at, and blew my arm out in October, showing my arm off. I hyperextended it, trying to show my arm off and pick a guy off first base. And it kind of never was the same since then. Well,
Rico, him and I were talking this afternoon about that one question, and I think, go ahead, Rico, ask that question. You already answered it.
It kind of pretty much is answered. That's why I was wondering, why did you turn down the Padres and everything?
Yeah, it was. My mom said the money was crap, and again, I love her to death, but she is a very protective, don't go outside the bubble, stay around type person. She talked me out of it. I was a 17, 18-year-old kid that just didn't know. I mean, we barely went out of the county. We didn't travel or do anything like that. So I was listening. I was being the good son, listening to her. And it was, in a way, it was a huge mistake because I was a really good baseball player. And, I still had an arm all up until I stopped playing softball a few years ago. But nothing like I did before. I could stand at home plate and throw it over the left field fence on a line. I've actually broken people's fingers throwing the ball to the bases because I threw it so hard. The pitchers would always say they could never hurt anybody a baseball sizzle when I threw it because it had so much backspin. But again, if I'd have went the baseball route, we wouldn't be here talking today. I would have never been C.W. Anderson. I mean, it kind of give and take. I love the career I had in wrestling, but I always wondered what if with baseball.
You follow baseball
I was just
still?
about to say that. What if? But I mean, look what happened. I mean, you went down the wrestling path.
The guy Brad Osmus. I can't remember if he was signed at the same time I was going to be signed or the year before or after, but I was a better catcher than he was, and he's in the Hall of Fame, and so I think that's where it kind of I kind of kicked myself in the ass with that.
I don't want to say thank you to your mom, but it's thank you because we never never had a chance to talk to you. But
what's kind of funny is Simon Diamond was signed. Well, he was drafted was going to be drafted the year before I was by the Padres, and then he was a catcher as well. It's just kind of crazy how we ended up teaming up and being the Extreme Horsemen with two guys that were baseball catchers.
Nice.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So do you still follow baseball?
No, man, I don't watch hardly any pro sports anymore. I kind of quit watching basketball after Jordan quit because I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. Jordan's the GOAT to me because I grew up during his era. I watch a little bit. I basically watch football during the season just to have something to watch on Sundays, but I hardly watch any baseball, basketball. I watch a lot of golf because I like playing golf.
Nice. Oh, so you and I would be enemies back in the day because I'm a big Detroit Pistons fan. So
absolutely.
Isaiah Thomas,
born and raised in
Detroit.
Yeah.
They still talk. Isaiah Thomas still talking his hatred for Michael Jordan, even nowadays. That's why I like watching the sports shows like Undisputed, which today was the last day of Undisputed, with Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless.
Yeah.
But I like watching shows like that. But I just, with work and wrestling on the weekends, I just don't. To me, I don't have time to sit down like I used to.
Right. We got a first. I'm just going to give respect to the chat. Hey, CW Anderson, you should come down and do a show for Pro Wrestling Extreme in Streeter, Illinois.
All they gotta do is contact me, man. I'll go pretty much anywhere.
Awesome.
I am still busy today. I work for a company here in North Carolina called AML. They're the ones, if you've heard of WrestleCade, they're the ones that promote WrestleCade. And then my tag partner, Preston Quinn, he just started a new promotion a few months ago called Mid-Atlantic Territory Wrestling, where we're wrestling almost every weekend. He's got 6 or 7 companies up under him trying to bring back territory wrestling. And it's really old school stuff. I mean, he don't allow dives. He don't allow pass bys. He don't allow leg slaps, any of that stuff. It's a really old school type feel wrestling. And I mean, even now we got 20 something shows the rest of the year just with his company.
Wow.
So I'm still busy.
Wow. And I will say this. I just recently, in the last year and a half, have became an indie wrestling fan because down here in Florida, I live in the Panhandle, and they have Adrian Whisper is the promoter, and he has XIW, Extreme Impact Wrestling, and I'm telling you what, watching an indie show compared to watching a AEW or WWE is not. They don't even compare, because in those indie shows, you guys go balls to the wall. And that shit hurts. It's gotta hurt.
That's kind of how I made my name, to the extent before ECW was the indie shows and traveling and putting the miles in and stuff like that. And a lot of guys that are, up top nowadays, they've never had to do the grind. And you see a lot of veterans, a lot of ones that they appreciate their success, and when they become famous more than the ones that didn't have to grind, and more the ones that were just given to them. And you can tell the ones that appreciate the grind as opposed to the ones that were just given to them.
Rico?
Exactly.
Rico?
So out of all the places you've been able to go, man, what would you say is your favorite city that you've wrestled in?
My favorite city would have to be Tokyo at Corrigan Hall. At one time they called me the king of Corrigan Hall. That was so popular there to an extent, the favorite gaijin. There's a lot of places in the United States. I wrestled my best friend Steve Carino in Brisbane, Australia. One time, that was a beautiful place to be. But I think just Japan in general is my favorite place. Just the culture, the fans, the wrestling style. I love Osaka. I love Tokyo. I just love Tokyo because it's so modernized, but just a great place to be. I think that because when you wrestle in Japan, I'm sorry guys, I didn't mean to interrupt, but when you wrestle in Japan, that style of wrestling, when I came through with Hashimoto and Masato Tanaka and Shinjiro Tani, when we were wrestling, it was more of a strong style. They were beating the hell out of us over there. It was, Samoa Joe got his start there, and then I think CM Punk came over for one tour with us before WWE signed him. But you get done wrestling there, and you feel like you've accomplished something because their style is so impactful.
Nice.
Gotcha.
So you're from over in the Carolinas, in the Indies. Did you ever run across the Hardys and Joey Matthews and all those guys?
We all started together.
Okay.
It was, from what I was told, we're the largest group to ever start together, to ever make it big. It was the Hardys, Joey Abs, Joey Matthews, Christian York, because they did a little, Joey Matthews was Joey Mercury. Christian York was in ECW with us. Lodi, Shane Helms, you had the Dups, Steve Carino, you had a few other guys as well. There was like 15 or 16 of us. We all started, we wrestled with Matt and Jess Omega promotion, and then Greg Mazoriak had a promotion called SCW in Raleigh that we all wrestled at and just switched back and forth. I think Steve and I were the only ones to get to ECW. Oh, and then you had Chili Willie, who was one of my students that came to ECW a little bit later. So it was a large group of us that started together that were wrestling on independence for a long time before we all made it.
Nice. Chili Willie was on the show about a year and a half ago, so that was interesting to talk to him. So
yeah.
Now, am I correct? You trained yourself, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. There was a little training school down from where I live, and a few of us would get in the ring and just train each other to an extent. And then I would just learn on the road as I go. When I was given the Anderson name and was tagging with my partner, Pat, I was kind of learning up under him and then getting in the ring with the Ivan Koloffs, the Wahoo McDaniels, Jimmy Vance, guys like that. And then I learned early on to sit with those guys and ask them and, to teach me psychology if they had time to watch my match and any critiquing they could give me. And I didn't want them to tell me the things I did right. I wanted to tell them what I did wrong. And then I learned from them that they would give me the small details of things I did wrong that made more impactful. And then in 1998, when I went to the power plant and did that 3 days of hell, Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker and Mike Winter and Pez Watley, God rest his soul, turned a rough edge CW Anderson and made him into what got my job at ECW. They fine tuned everything and made things make more sense and the less is more type deal.
There you go.
So we know the CW in your name. Where did the Anderson come from? Is that a family thing or?
No, it was my very first show was December 4th of 1994, excuse me. And the guys that were wrestling on the show, the promoters, they put me under a hood and called me El Chico because they wanted me to mimic a Razor Ramon thing just to kind of get my feet wet. Well, there was two guys wrestling on the show, Pat and Rocky Anderson, that were given the Anderson name by Gene before Gene had passed away. And Rocky was probably about my age now, so he was retiring, and Pat was in his 30s, and Pat was looking somebody to tag with, so I kind of looked the bill. Even though I had a goatee, I looked more like Big Boss Man than I did an Anderson at the time because I had more hair than I do now, of course, but I had the goatee, and I looked like Big Boss Man. So Pat sat me down and got to talking to me and told me the spiel, would I like to be an Anderson? And growing up here, I always hated the Andersons and hated Ric Flair and, the Horseman deal. But I figured, what the hell? I said, yeah, sure, because I didn't know what I was going to be. So he said, I want you to be my partner. He said, we got to think of a 3-letter name for you because, I'm Pat, you got Ole and Arn. It just kind of goes with it. So for like 2 weeks, I was thinking of Ike and Cal. I mean, I couldn't come up with anything. So there was a guy that was a manager for the little local promotion. He was actually my baseball coach my entire life. His name was Randy Driver. And I said, Mr. Randy, I said, I can't come up with anything. I don't know what to call myself as an Anderson. He said, just use your initials and call yourself CW. And it just kind of stuck. So once I started calling myself CW Anderson, I was learning, you got to have some kind of hook, something people can remember you by. Well, I am a huge, if Steve Corino says I'm the blackest redneck you'll ever meet. So that's because I grew up I grew up on an all dirt road where I was the only white family. My best friend today is a black guy. And so he's the best man at my upcoming wedding. But so I was a huge hip hop and rap fan, but I was a big Tupac fan. So I saw Tupac's, one of his album covers where he's doing this. I think it was All Eyes on Me. So I saw this, and there was a guy called Tom Casati up in the northeastern part running around. That was a wrestling manager. He always come out and did this. So one day I just kind of put it together and got the CW hook.
Nice.
Awesome.
I like it.
I always tell people when once you see this, it's all downhill from there. That's all I got.
So a rap fan, huh? What is Tupac your favorite?
Eminem now, but it used to be Tupac
By far.
for a long time. But it's like I tell people I love Eminem just for the fact it doesn't have to do anything with his skin color. It's just the fact that his rhymes and his schemes make so much sense. And he said one time, and I tell people this in my wrestling seminars when you're just structuring your matches, Eminem finds 2 words that rhyme. He said, and the best part of being a rapper is taking those 2 words and intricately weaving the verses to make them match each other. And I tell people to use that scenario when coming up with their matches.
Nice. So you mentioned seminars. How important are seminars to wrestlers, up and coming wrestlers, newbies, even seasoned wrestlers? Are those important things to do?
Very important, especially nowadays, because there's so many people that think they're wrestlers, the weekend warriors, and they're getting people to get trained under them. They train people because other ones, guys don't know any better. And if you can do seminars for people that have been somewhere and done that, you go to a Dudley seminar, you go down in Texas and go to Booker T's, or come up here, you can get Dr. Tom Pritchard to do a seminar. I did a seminar with him where it was myself, my partner Preston Quinn, and Dr. Tom Pritchard, and we did an all-weekend seminar. And my partner Preston and I we're such huge tag team guys that when he started teaching tag team psychology, I mean, we were like little kids ourselves. We were learning. We've been doing this 30 years. But seminars from people that have been there, done that, and have a good reputation are very good, because there's people now, and I know you've heard them that are up top that says they don't think they can be taught anything by veterans, which is complete horseshit. If you don't think you can be taught anything, you need to sell your boots and go do something else, because you've learned everything in this business. I still learn things. I had Arn Anderson a few months ago in a match where I was tagging with Brock in a 6-man, and Arn took something that we were trying to figure out and made a small tweak to it that we just overlooked, and made the biggest difference. And it taught me so much just from a small tweak coming from Arn Anderson. And when he got done with it, I'm sitting here with the dumbfounded look, like, how in the hell did I not think of that? And because he's Arn Anderson, he's been there, done that. And that's why we learn from people like that.
Right. Exactly. My brother, go ahead, Rico. Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just, anything you do, you always learn. You constantly keep learning, no matter what you're doing in your life. You always keep learning.
You have to get better, because one of my things that I want to do in this business is leave it better than I found it. And that's what I try to instill in guys now, because, Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker was so hard on me training to make me a better person and make me a better wrestler, that I want to do it the same guys, because I can tell these guys, I'm not your friend. I'm not going to put my hand on your back and pat you and tell you things okay, because if I tell you something in an aggressive way where I'm pissed off, if you go to do it again, you're going to have me in the back of your mind, because I still do things today. If I go to do it, Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker's in the back of my mind screaming at me, why did you doing something that stupid? You know better. Not that everything's okay, because I'm the type of guy, I don't need a safe space or a therapy dog. I'm okay with that.
Right. No, we talk all the time about how important, like, AEW has Arn Anderson in the back. People need to listen to him.
And they don't.
And people need to listen to Sting, and people, and they don't. And
they don't. Jerry Lynn, you got Jerry Lynn, Chris Daniels, Arn Anderson. You did have Steven Regal at the time. You got Sting.
Yeah.
You got FTR, who are Carolina boys as well, that you can listen to, because they've been up top. They're the best tag team in the world. You got Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal. You got guys like that you can listen to, but a lot of them think they know everything and they don't want to listen to them.
Yep.
That's a shame. So
got that cockiness.
Yeah. There's the ones that don't know the grind.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in ECW, just got there. What was your first impression, and what are your interactions with the one and only, spoiler, Paul Heyman?
My first interaction was I was scared to death to be there. You see the guys on TV, and you sit in the locker room, and even though my character CW Anderson is this badass, spit in your face, fight anybody, Chris Wright is a different person. I'm very quiet. I'm an introvert. I'm very awkward with a lot of things. So when I get there and see all these people that I've seen on TV and how they are, I'm in my corner, and I didn't, before I would wrestle, I would sit there until my name was called. I didn't put my boots on or anything. I sit in my corner and I'm quiet, just like you're taught. My first interaction with Paul Heyman was my buddy. This is how I got my job at ECW. Was my buddy had a tryout down in Georgia. He and I, the night before, his name was Curtis White. His name was, if you go back near the end of WCW, his name was Toad. He tagged with the PG-13 against the Young Dragons, I think they were called, near the end. So he and I wrestled the Public Enemy in South Carolina one night. He's like, look, I got a tryout at ECW, because his tag partner was Lodi. Both of them were my students. And Lodi, through Raven, through Dreamer, got Toad his tryout, Curtis tryout. He's like, come with me. if you can't get in the ring, at least you can, politic, say hello. Carino's there, and me and Carino were friends from years ago here in the Carolinas. Simon Diamond, who was Lance Diamond at the time, was the same way. You can say hello to them and hang out. I didn't want to go. I had just started seeing this new girl. I was all about her, and he literally drugged me to the tryout. So I'm standing around the ring, saying hello, talking to Steve. Toad has his little tryout with Angel from the Baldies. He gets done. Nova's running the tryouts. Nova leans to the ropes and looks at me and goes, "Chris, do you have your gear?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's in the car." He goes, "Well, run and get it real quick." So I run, throw my gear on. I get in the ring, and he puts me in the ring with Simon Diamond. And we run a little 5-minute spot match, get done. Simon or Nova tells me, I got really good timing, chemistry, blah, blah, blah. I get out, and I hear somebody sitting in the bleachers scream at Bill Alfonso to get the ball guy back in the ring. Fonzie looks at me and goes, "Daddy, he wants you back in the ring." I'm like, "Who?" It's Paul Heyman sitting with the Dudleys and Taz. And they throw me back in the ring for like the next hour, and it felt like 2 hours. I'm in there. They're throwing different guys at me, running spots, doing different things. The tryouts are over with. I go in the back to get cleaned up. They're starting to let people in. And I still remember this like it's a flat burn in my brain. I'm at the sink. I'm spitting up blood from where I bumped and hit the turnbuckle so hard. The door opens to my left, and in walks Paul Heyman. Hat, long black vest on, trench coat on, walks right up to me and sticks his hand out and goes, "Hey, I'm Paul Heyman. It's nice to meet you." I draw my hand off. I said, "Hey, Paul, I'm Chris Wright. It's an honor, sir." He starts asking me, he says, "Where are you?" He says, "Where are you wrestling at? How long you been wrestling?" Blah, blah, blah. I said, "Well, I'm at the power plant in Atlanta." I said, he said, "Do you have a contract there?" And I was like, "No, sir." They told me literally like a few weeks before they didn't think I had the skills to be at WCW, that I didn't have the talent. He said, "Well, who do you wrestle as? What's your wrestling name?" I said, "C.W. Anderson." He goes, "I knew it," in classic Paul voice. He says, "You look like an Anderson. You had the left punch-like arm, the spine buster." And he says, "Don't leave before I speak to you." He says, "You're more than welcome to hang out backstage." I said, "I appreciate that, sir." So the show's about getting ready to start. Jim Molyneux comes up to me and goes, "Are you CW?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Paul wants to see you in the back." So I go back there. I go in the dressing room. He's sitting there with Vito LaGrassa, Skull Von Crush, Danny Doran, and Roadkill. He introduces me to them. He says, "You're tagging with Vito. Your third match. Welcome to ECW."
Dang. There you go.
I got my match. I got a match there, and we were in the Carolinas next week, and I drove there, and then I drove to Florida the week after that, and that's kind of how I got my start with ECW.
So was your relationship with Paul Heyman always that good?
And yes, during the entire time at ECW, it was like my very first match, or excuse me, not that first match, but the second or third match I was in, he put me over, which I got heat with Bubba Dudley because of that, because nobody goes over in their first matches at ECW. And I later ended up having to do a promo with them, and Balls hit me with a chair shot as kind of a hazing receipt for going over. I'll find that out later. And Paul was always big on me. A few weeks later, I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I do a super kick, and I'm dancing around with one leg up like Karate Kid style. And after the match, I'm walking back, and Bubba grabs me and jacks me up in the corner and tells me, he says, "You're a fucking heel." He said, "You need to start acting like one." He said, "You're Paul's flavor of the month, and for some reason, he's big on you. So start acting like a fucking heel." He said, "Are we clear?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And even right near the end, the Massacre on 34th Street, after my match with Tommy, before Tommy put me over, I'm sitting getting changed. Paul comes up to me and gets down on one knee, puts his hands on my knees and goes, "Are you leaving me?" And I was like, "No, Paul." I said, "I'd never leave you." I said, "I'm happy here." He said, "I'm hearing rumors that you're going to WCW. I don't know where the hell he got that from." And I was like, "Paul," I said, "Look, you and Tommy give me my chance, give me a break." I said, "I will be here until the day the doors close." I said, "I am that type of man." And I didn't leave. And then, he didn't return the favor the same, because he never told us we were closing.
Oh,
and then it was years later, 5 years ago, when he and I got in that Twitter war, because I'm told the accusations of him filming Rollerball when he's supposed to be in California saving us. He thinks I made the shit up, but it was actually the higher ups telling me that he was out there filming the movie instead of So allegedly, let's put that out there. You got to say that crap nowadays. He's allegedly out there filming the movie Rollerball when he's supposed to be saving us. So when I did that in the interview, and I've said that in an interview for years, and all of a sudden he gets wind of it, and he starts blasting me on Twitter. And then all his little crony Twitter followers go and like, they start blasting me and calling me all kinds of names and all kinds of crap. And then when I come back with my facts, crickets.
Pen drops.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have no problem with Paul. Not one. The only thing I've ever said the entire time, and ECW has been closed since 2001, was be man enough to tell us that we were closed. We found out by you sitting on Raw with Jim Ross commentating that ECW was done. That was it. And then we're all owed all this high amounts of money. So, but I'm always grateful for Paul giving me the chance to spread my wings, so to speak, and for Tommy to agree into it as well.
Gotcha.
Rico?
Well, that kind of like goes into what my question was. So what is your personal opinion when WWE tried to bring back ECW?
You mean the Disney-fied version of ECW?
A Disney-fied version. I'm writing that shit down.
So
Disney-fied.
I get a call from Tommy one day, and he goes, "Vince wants to hire you." And I said, "You're full of shit." I said, "That's not possible." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "Look, we're bringing back ECW." He said, "There's a lot of steam with ECW right now, and Vince is letting us bring it back." He goes, "Paul and I are control." He said, "Or we have say so over everything." He said, "You and I are picking our feud right back up where we left off at." He says, "You just got to say you're signed." I said, "So I don't have to go to Ohio Valley?" He goes, "Nope." I said, "And you and Paul have complete control, no Vince." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, for you, I'll sign." And most of us, Danny Doran and guys like that, we all signed for a rock bottom, bare minimum, but there was supposed to be bonuses on the makeup on the end, which where you make your money back. After the first show at the ECW arena, when I wrestled Sabu, Vince saw it, didn't like how it looked on TV, and took complete control of it and started putting his people in there. And from there on out, it was never ECW. And I could not wait to get fired from that company.
No,
it was
you
hell.
can tell it wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same as the original. You could tell.
Nope. If Vince was smart, he'd have let Paul and Tommy run it, let us run our smaller places like the arena and like ECW did. Let them do it. You would make a killer amount of money. If you want to put a few of your guys in, fine. But let ECW be ECW, and he'd have been fine. Because they were fiending for ECW to come back, but he couldn't keep his hands off of it. And it just went to hell in a handbasket after that. And there was nights that Francine and I were begging not to be on TV, not begging to have a match. And when we find out we weren't, we were sneaking out and driving to the next town. We were like up against, like in a movie, sneaking against the wall trying to get out, running to our cars to get the hell away from there. You got to be there all damn day. You got to be there like 11 o'clock in the morning till it's done at 11 o'clock at night. And then you're not doing anything. You're talking about some long, miserable days. And then plus, it's not what you signed on for. So, and I remember January 17th, 2007 or 6, John Laurinaitis calls me and says, CW, I think we're going to have to release you. And I went, sweet. He said, maybe, down the road we can pursue this. I'm like, no, I'm good. I said, can I go back to Japan? He's like, yeah, I know you like being over there. He said, you just have a 90-day no compete clause with TNA. I was like, yeah, you ain't got to worry about that. So I was happy to get fired from that place.
Nice. So money back in ECW compared to money that people make now in the wrestlers, is that a considerable amount of difference?
Yeah, the ones they make now, they make a hell of a lot more than we did. Because when I started ECW, we were running 4 nights a week. I made $75 a night. That's no hotels, no gas, nothing. And I'm driving everywhere. Paul wouldn't fly me. And my first few months in, out of the 4 nights, I would maybe wrestle 1 night. So I'm driving to the other 3 towns, not getting paid, making $75. My first year at ECW, I claimed a $21,000 loss on my taxes. Wow. I was sleeping either in my car. Bill Wiles, before he and I started tagging, he was gracious enough to let me crash with the ring crew a couple times. Or I remember a few times I would sleep in Jeff Jones with that crew, Jeff Jones room, and Jeff Jones I wouldn't have a bed. I'd have the floor. I would get a blanket, a pillow. I had to use my clothes as a pillow, and that goof was still charging me part of the room.
For sleeping on your clothes?
For sleeping on my clothes on the floor, I was still getting charged. And he would never wait for you. Like if you were following him, he'd go out a walk, like you'd be walking around Walmart. He would go on by himself and then get in the car and take off and leave you.
Dang.
Wow.
Wow.
So, and then I basically had a breakdown one night in Boston because I was driving everywhere. And this is about the time the DUP started. Now, they're friends of mine from here in the Carolinas. And one of the guys' trucks break down. We're in Boston, and we have no way back. We had to go rent a car that cost us extra money that we didn't have. And I remember breaking down to Paul and Tommy. I was like, I can't live off of $75 a night. I got to do something. And they ended up pushing me to $200 a night. Then we got pushed back to 2 nights of wrestling. So I was only making $400 a week. And that's when I started wrestling RVD, Carino, Tommy Dreamer, Jerry Lynn, who are making in the thousands a night. And I'm only making $200 a night. And I'm wrestling those guys, putting them over. Mm-hmm. And then I was not making any money at ECW. I remember the video games came out. We had to sign a release saying we wouldn't ask for royalties for the video game.
Jeez.
And I never got paid for my I Quit match. I never got paid for that. I think all the money went back to RVD. If I remember what I called, because he was owed like 10 grand or something, and all the money went to him to come back for that match.
So would it be would it be safe to say ECW still owes you money then for your?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I got whatever it's called when they file bankruptcy. I got that, and I got I was gonna get a percentage if I signed it and sent it back. It was like a low percentage, and it was gonna be like $500. I was like, the hell with it. I didn't even sign it. It won't even worth it.
Wow. Rico.
All right, so I love that and I respect that, man. Like, that's for everybody listening. I'm not knocking anybody else who gets it easy, but I'm saying I love people who grind it out, who sleep in their cars, who go into truck stops and take showers, and they work so hard. It's like, I think they just appreciate it more.
We do. We were sleeping six guys to a room. It was me and Jack Victory, Steve Carino. Okay, our normal traveling clique was me and Carino, Jack Victory, and Louis Dangerously, and then Francine and Tommy were in another car. But in my 4 was sleeping in the room. Jack and Lou got the bed because they were the veterans. Carino couldn't sleep on the cot, so he was sleeping up under the sink. Our ECW champion was sleeping under the sink. And there was a lot of nights in the beginning, there were 6 guys to our room before we go to a pay-per-view. And, they always make the rise and fall of ECW. But if you notice, most of the ones that they had commentate on that or talk about it were the ones that were taken care of. Not the ones like myself, Danny Doran, Roadkill, Chris Chetty, the people that, and Francine, the ones like that weren't taken care of. They didn't hear from our side of it.
Wow.
The ones that were left behind.
Wow. So you mentioned pay-per-view. What was it? How did it feel in your career at that point where you finally got that call to do the pay-per-view?
The first one was a dark match, even though I did run in to save, I think, Lita or, Miss Congeniality, and New Jack came in and melted a football game over my head. That was my first interaction. But my very first pay-per-view was Guilty as Charged 2000, and I was supposed to be the dark match against Mikey Whipwreck. And Tommy comes up to me an hour or so before the pay-per-view starts and goes, CW, you and Mikey are first. I'm like, yeah, I know. We're first dark. He goes, no, you're first live. And holy hell, I was nervous. I couldn't get still. I was shaking. And Joey Styles looks at me and goes, what is wrong with you? And I said, I'm getting ready to go live on pay-per-view. It's my first pay-per-view ever. He said, CW, you and Rob Van Dam tore the house down in Chicago on TV in front of more people that are going to watch this pay-per-view. He says, just relax and be you, man. You'll be fine. So I went out. That was my match where I beat Mikey. But my first one, the dark match, I remember before I went out, Dreamer come by and grabbed my arm and jerked me to the side. And he goes, you're getting this match tonight, not because you're my friend. He said, because you are a hell of a worker. He said, I want you to go out there tonight and I want you to try and steal this damn show so you can take this match and stick it up the ass of those guys at WCW that told you you weren't shit and weren't going to make it in that company. He said, can you do that for me? I was like, I'll damn sure try.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
There you go.
That's good stuff. Rico, you got anything?
Yeah, sorry. I was itching. I was gonna. So you were saying like, because you weren't really a fan early on, but when you started kind of getting in the game and everything, was there anybody who you really kind of looked up to, you became a fan of, or maybe you're a fan of now?
The guy that's my idol, always been my idol, Bobby Eaton. You don't get any better than that. I wanted to be Bobby Eaton so bad. Like when I first got into wrestling and nobody taught me, and you're the mark that I had the Midnight Express boots down the side and the tights because I was such a mark for Bobby. To me, Bobby Eaton, I wanted to be Bobby Eaton because I wanted to go out there and be able to wrestle a broomstick or Ric Flair and have a 5-star match and not hurt anybody. And to me, that was Bobby Eaton. And it wasn't till a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years before Bobby died, that he found out that I was his idol, or that he was my idol. He had no idea. And I was such a mark. I mean, I'm still a mark for Bobby, but I was such a mark for him. The very first time I ever got to meet Bobby was at the arena when Paul brought him in to start a feud with me. And I knew I'm going to meet Bobby. So I'm at the ring and I didn't know Bobby was there. And I walked back through the curtain at the arena, and there was 2 black curtains at the old arena. You walk through one, and then there's a room to the side where like the Dudleys and Taz and those guys changed. And then there was a huge area where the rest of us stood. I go to walk through the second curtain, and Bobby's sitting there with Paul Heyman. I stop and I go in that other room, and I'm like a little schoolgirl getting ready to meet Justin Bieber. I could not breathe. I was hyperventilating.
Yeah.
I had to calm myself down. Like, come on, dude, what the hell is wrong with you? I was like, I couldn't breathe because I'm getting ready to go meet Bobby Eaton. And then we do the thing that is on YouTube where Bobby come in and he and I trade punches. And I remember the next night after we did that, RVD pulled me to the side. He said, just letting you know that before you and Bobby squared off, Paul made the entire locker room watch you 2 guys go at it. And he said, I want you to watch the 2 best punchers in professional wrestling square off.
Nice.
Awesome.
I was like, shit, that's like,
that had to feel good.
That was pretty freaking awesome to me.
Right. And then, yeah.
As much as I respect Rob and the way I respect Bobby. And then last year, George South, you guys know George South. He is a legend in this game, especially here in the Carolinas. George is a collector. He has his own little museum, and he's a collector, and he knows how close Bobby was to me. So we go do a show together because George works for AML as well. And he had a box of stuff that was Bobby's that he gave me. And it was Bobby's Blockbuster card. It was the letter that WCW mailed Bobby Eaton to tell him he was fired because they never told him. It was a letter that they mailed to him. It was a plaque that had a picture of him and Stan Lane, a plaque that had a picture of him and Steven Regal when they were the Blue Bloods. It was a pair of Bobby's tights. And it was also the USA tag plaque, the gold plaque off the red USA tag belts that they had that he gave me.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I had that stuff because he says, I know you would never get rid of it and you would keep it. And I was like, nope, that is going in my, because I don't collect things. The only thing I collect is chess sets, but nothing wrestling. And that's the first thing I've ever gotten like that wrestling. And that's never going anywhere.
Wow. That's crazy. You use the word mark, and I'll be honest. If truth be known, okay, we're all probably all marks.
Yep.
To some point. And anyways, I can understand the feeling you got when you knew you were gonna go up against that guy. Every time I either Instagram, Facebook message, email, I go, no one's gonna answer. But when you guys answer, like, I've been so giddy about this. And I get nervous. I was nervous up to about yesterday. And I was like, dude, I've done enough of these podcasts, He's just another guy. He's going to talk about his career. But I'm not going to lie. For the last week, I've been going, I told my wife, Edie, I go, Edie, oh my God. I get to talk to CW Anderson. Oh my God, you don't understand. We watched some of your matches. I'm like, so I get that. I really do. And by the way, congratulations on you and your fiance too.
Thank you.
Is a wedding coming up like recently here?
It's September 7th of next year. We got a few weddings this year to go to. My niece's is one of them in August. So we got a few weddings. So Brittany is going to push it back to next year till things calm down. We got engaged a few years ago, right before COVID hit, and we were going to get married as soon as COVID pissed off. But we're just, we're in no rush. She is a fantastic woman. She treats me so good. I mean, there's a huge age difference between us, but I've never she's 27 years old, but she has got the mind, and she's that old soul because she's asleep right now. She goes to sleep before I do.
Nice. There you go.
If she was a normal 27-year-old, I wouldn't be with her because I can't hang. And I get the part of being a mark and being kind of giddy to some extent. The first time I wrestled Dusty Rhodes, it was in a bull rope match for his promotion. On the outside, I'm CW Anderson. They're strapping the bull rope to us, and I'm big bad CW Anderson about to whoop Dusty Rhodes' ass. On the inside, I'm 12-year-old Chris Wright going, holy shit, I'm wrestling Dusty Rhodes. So man, we're all marks. I did that. I wrestled the Rock and Roll Express a few years ago with Shane Douglas was my tag partner, and JJ Dillon was our manager. And we had Bobby to hit him, and JJ is tossing his shoe to me to catch. And again, I'm 12-year-old Chris Wright getting ready to catch JJ Dillon's shoe. So man, you got to be a mark for this business to an extent, because if you don't, why are you even here?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. On the podcast about 4 months ago, we had Ken Anderson on here.
What a great guy, man. What a great guy.
Amazing. And my brother, he marked out so bad that the way we got him to come on the podcast is my brother was like 2 months in a row would do this Ken Anderson gimmick where he'd drop the mic and do Mr. whatever. So we had an Anderson off. So both of them had a chance to do what Ken Anderson does best. And so I have to send that video to you. It's a clip. So. Man,
he's such a good guy. But last year, Preston and I, because Brittany's our valet, she's basically Miss Elizabeth out there. She doesn't fight. She doesn't do anything. She's there. She's Miss Elizabeth. So we're wrestling at OGK last year. Matt Taven and Mike Bennett, they're such a good tag team. And you got Maria with them as well. Well, Brittany is a huge mark for Maria. I mean, huge mark. So we're standing in the ring, and we're getting ready to wrestle, and Maria grabs the mic and she says, Who's this woman with you? She starts cutting a promo on Brittany. She hits the Britney Spears line. Oh, it's Brittany. She got ready to say bitch. And I look over at Brittany, and she's smiling like she's marking out. And I look at her, I said, stop smiling. She had to smile off because she's that little kid again watching somebody she idolizes cut a promo on her. She goes, awesome. Oh, sorry.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
You can say whatever you want to say about me. I don't care.
Yeah. That's exactly what she said. Maria's like, can I say? I said, say whatever you want to say. Please cut a promo on her. Brittany's sitting there like smiling, and I was like, really? But I can't say anything because I would do the same thing.
Absolutely. Rico, you got anything?
So do you think, when do you see the possibility of, I'm putting my boots, my tights up for good, never ever touching them again?
I tried it. I've told this a couple times, and I'm completely open and honest about a lot of things in my life, because you never know who's listening. You never know who's going to hear these things. Wrestlers, sometimes these guys have great glamorous lives, and sometimes we live in dark holes. And there was a video put of me a few years ago where I tried to retire because I was in a very dark spot in my life. I found out my now ex-wife was seeing somebody else. And it sent me overboard. I tried retiring because I thought making her happy would bring her back, and it never did. So that night I tried killing myself. Cause I was in a bad place. And thank God I had somebody here, which was Brittany, who saved me. and I tried putting the boots down. I tried walking away because I was done.
Mhm.
For years, because my ex-wife made me hate wrestling. She didn't like wrestling. She didn't like me around. She didn't like CW at all. And I had grown to be CW, the ECW CW, which was an asshole. I wasn't Chris anymore. So when I walked away a few years ago, it was kind of the best thing I ever did because it got me away from, the whole you can't see the forest for the trees. It got me away from wrestling. It got me appreciating my life again, appreciating a lot of things that I took for granted, and realizing, you know what, I miss wrestling. I miss the brotherhood. I miss traveling. I miss being on the road, especially being on the road with Brittany. I miss those things. So I came back after a few months. And it was one of the best things I ever did because, I'm 52 years old. I'm 205 pounds. I'm the best shape I've ever been in. ECW, I was 260, 250, sometimes even 240, but I'm 205 right now. And one of my friends calls me Benjamin Button because it looks like I reverse aging. That's what he says anyway. But, I know it's kind of a long way to get your question, Rico, but I don't know. I mean, George South's in his 60s. He's still wrestling. Ricky Morton's still wrestling. It's something we just can't walk away from. I can't walk away from because it's been such a huge part of my life for 30 years. And I love the wrestling part, but I also love the people I get to see on the weekends too, my second family. When I was at ECW, I would always tell my mom, hey, it's time to go to work. I would kiss her bye and tell her I'm going to work, go to wrestle. She's like, you're not going to wrestle. You're going to see your second family. So that's what wrestling is to me. And to put it down, I don't know. I always said if I got injured really bad again, I'd walk away. There's so many variables that I would say. I blew my back out at Hardcore Homecoming wrestling Spike Dudley, and I couldn't walk. I was in a bed for 28 days. And I said if I could ever walk again, I wouldn't wrestle. That was 2005. And here it is, 2023, and I'm still wrestling.
Boy, I want you to continue on much further down the road.
Thank you for that story. Thank you for
as long as I can still wrestle and still put out CW Anderson and still be that person as far as in the ring, I'm still going to perform. When I stop giving that what people used to see of CW, I think it's time to walk away because I'm doing myself a disservice and I'm doing the fans a disservice. I don't want to be that veteran that lollipops his way through a match and they're looking at him like, man, that ain't the CW I used to know.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for opening up that part of your life that it could be uncomfortable. I appreciate it. I know Rick and I appreciate it.
All right, sorry, you went through that. I'm glad everything you stayed with us because we get to see you.
Yep, it's one of those. They say rock bottom's a college education. That they got so many sayings for everything you go through, and once you go through these things, you learn to appreciate. And when people always ask me how's your day going? I say, you know what? I woke up on the right side of the dirt, so anything after that's a plus.
I love that saying.
Everything's yeah. So I have a bunch of names that I'm not, because we touched on a lot of the names that I had written down, but one of my favorite ECW wrestlers was Raven. WCW wrestler was Raven. Did you ever have any run-ins with him? Did you experience any time with him?
I love Raven. I used to go stay at Raven's house when I was at the power plant because, Lodi was one of my students. And, of course, Lodi being Raven's sign guy, I got close to Raven living at, going to his house when we were at the power plant during the week. And then I would travel with him a little bit. And so when he came back to ECW, he and I were already close from that. I remember one time him and Tracy Smothers almost got into a fight over me. Wow. Because Raven was giving me the business about something I was doing in the ring, and he was being a little bit rough, but it was Raven. So I listened to him, but I know how Raven is because experiencing him from, the years before. And Tracy thought he was just berating me for no reason and being belligerent to me. So him and Raven got into it pretty heavily. And I finally had to tell Tracy, look, Raven and I got a past, from back at WCW and stuff. And, I love Raven to death. I think a lot of him. So it was always my greatest compliments from him when he was telling me, when I'd ask him, Raven, what can I do? How can I get better? What am I doing wrong? He's like, CW, you're doing everything perfect, man. He said, I tell you if you worry. He said, but it's always a pleasure working with you. Wow, so awesome. Coming from Raven, because Raven is a freaking genius. in and out of the ring. And that's a huge compliment coming from him.
I loved it. I loved watching him. He was just one sick dude, and I mean, all his mind. You could tell he had a mind for the business.
He does.
He was very, very. Everything he did was very awesome.
It made everything he did made sense and was for a point. Yeah.
Yeah. Rico.
I was just remember like back in the day, I was always WWF before it was WWE. And I never actually watched ECW yet. And it was like right when you guys started. And my brother, we were doing the backyard wrestling. And he did this moonsault, and then he points to the sky like Sabu. And I was like, what in the world are you doing, man? And it just like, he was like, you got to watch ECW, man. It's just, it's a different atmosphere. I promise you, you're going to love it.
You know, what's funny, Rico, with that is, you know, growing up, I never had cable. I didn't get cable until I was like 23 years old. And it was the huge satellite that you could, you know, pick up Pluto on. It was the big one that was 20 foot in the air and it turned. And I'm turning it one day and it runs across Madison Square Garden, stop, and ECW was on. I had no idea what ECW was. And that match was Sabu and somebody else, and Sabu does a pullover, just does a pullover into a Frankensteiner, and I'm immediately hooked. And I was such a Sabu mark coming up watching him. I even got one of his videos from RF Video that had the table signed by Sabu, and didn't find out till I got to ECW that Rob Feinstein signed some of them as well. So he smarted me up with that. And the first time I wrestled Sabu, that's on the network as well. I am running from him because I'm scared to death of him. I was scared to death of Sabu in the ring my very first match. After that, I loved wrestling with him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've heard he's pretty great guy right there, man.
He is awesome. And after, you know, Sabu doesn't respect you until he wrestles you. That was just the way he was brought up. And that night in New Orleans, he wanted to wrestle Bill Wiles because him and Bill were friends. He runs off, asks Paul, can he wrestle Bill? He comes back and says, CW, it's me and you. Oh, shit. I get in the ring. You see me run from him. And the first we lock up, I'm so scared. When we lock up and break, I don't protect myself. And he punches me in the face and tells me never to do it again. Got it. I learned from there. And after that, when we came in the back, he said, I'll wrestle you any day of the week. He said, you don't hurt me. He said, we have a good match. So, yeah. But I really think a lot of Sabu.
So, Pop, if you don't mind me, I want to ask him, who is the toughest or the hardest hitter in ECW? Like, you get hit and you're like, man, wow.
Dangerous was Mike Awesome. He's a freaking goof, or was a goof. The hardest hitter, Masato Tanaka. I never wrestled him at ECW, but we got to wrestle in Japan a lot, and he made my world go white one night. He knocked me out, but he hits hard. But Mike Awesome hit hard, but he was unsafe.
There's a difference.
I mean, there's a complete difference. I mean, Balls hit hard with his chair shots, but it was safe. Axel was the same way. Mike Awesome was just dangerous. And also, Mike Awesome you get in the ring with him. The first time I got in the ring with him, I'm 4 months at ECW, and we call the match, and we get in, and I lock up with him, and he had forgotten everything. I'm like, dude, you're our ECW World Heavyweight Champ. I'm calling the match.
This is a little bit backwards here.
I have a quick story about Mike Awesome, why I have so much heat with him. Was years later, we're in Japan. This is early 2000s, and he's brought in for those Hustle pay-per-views. And we see him. It's myself, Steve Corino, Low Key, and Spanky, Brian Kendrick. We're in Tokyo, Roppongi, which is Times Square, Roppongi. We see Mike Awesome. It's 2:00 in the morning. He's walking towards us. He's got sunglasses on. He walks up to us. Now, mind you, I wrestled Mike Awesome a dozen times at ECW. We were together at MLW, so he knows who I am. He walks up, Steve Corino, man, because he's blazed out of his mind. What's up, man? Big high five, big dap, big squeeze. Low Key, man, what's going on, brother? It's good to see you. He'd never met Spanky before in his life. Spanky, man, I've never met you. I've heard such great things about you. So good to meet you, brother. And he looks at me and goes, hey, man. And Corino leans up and goes, he don't know who you are. And I go, Mike, it's CW, man. CW Anderson. Yeah, man. What? Hey, what's going on? He had no clue who I was. So after that, he had a complete heat with me from here on out.
Nice. Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I hear the name New Jack. The guy Adrian Whisper from XIW down here, he tells me stories about New Jack and him went balls to walls with the chairs everywhere throughout the whole arena. Is New Jack as hard ass as he's made out to be?
If you cross him, but a lot of people knew this, that me and Jack were like this. He lived down the road from here in Greensboro, and I still talk to his wife every so often, check on her. I didn't know how much Jack loved me until after I knew me and Jack were close, but his wife Jen, she goes, he adored you, CW. She said he talked such good things about you. He always called me Big Head because I always had my head's big. He always called me Big Head, but he loved me to death, and I loved him. The day I found out he was gone, Mike Keener messaged me one day and said, "Hey, we lost Jack." I said, "Lost him where?" He said, "Jack." He didn't say New Jack or Jack Victory. He said, "New Jack." He said, "He died." I broke down on it still hurts. I broke down on my couch crying because Jack and I were so close. He would always come to AML and hang out with us. He would always come to these little local shows. We talk every week. He'd text me. The last text he sent to me, he wanted to make sure I'd finished his book. And in the ring, petrified of him? Yes, but easy. Jack took care of you. Jack didn't hurt me. He never hurt anybody intentionally. That he didn't mean to. That didn't cross him. Nice. But Jack was a great guy. Easy to work. Even better outside the ring as a person. We've got so many road stories with him. So many stories with Jack. He's one of those that you want to see. If they got to take somebody else. Don't take Jack.
Right.
He's gone too soon, but there's a huge misconception of him. Jack just made it look dangerous. He just wasn't dangerous.
Gotcha. We got a question from the chat. C.W. Anderson versus Kinemura. Was a great match.
Thank you. Okay, it was White Plains, New York. He was the first Japanese guy I ever wrestled. And Kinemura kayfabed me on English. He speaks perfect English. But he actually had Tajiri translate the match for us. It wasn't until I got to Japan and started working with him over there at 01 that I found out that Kinemura spoke perfect English.
Nice. Man, there's so much we can talk about. I want to respect your time, though. So
you're good, man. If we can always do a part 2 if you got a few more things. We're good.
Okay, because I have down here good road stories, good rib stories. I mean, we need to come back to touch on those. I'm sure you got lots of good road stories.
There's rib stories upon rib stories with that.
So let's make a deal. Let's make a deal. You share one of them, and then
okay.
3 or 4 months down the road, I'll hit you up. We'll redo it. We'll call it C.W. Anderson Road and Ribs.
I got two road stories. One involves New Jack, and one involves Dreamer and Francine. I'll tell you those two. The one with Jack's kind of quick. Jack got hurt somewhere. We were somewhere in Missouri and we're driving to St. Louis. So Jack wanted me to drive him to St. Louis because he couldn't drive. If you've ever been around St. Louis, around the area, it's nothing but fields and corn. It's flat for miles upon miles, and it's middle of the night. And I've been driving felt like hours, and Jack was passed out. We're in a Mitsubishi Eclipse. So we are crammed in this damn car. He's passed out, and off, it seems like hundreds of feet, I see this huge, had to be a 30-foot cross just burning. There was a huge KKK cross burning. What the hell? I look over and I pop Jack on the arm. I said, "Jack, wake up. Jack, wake up." He comes to, I said, "Jack, what do you think about that?" He looks and goes, "Keep driving, CW. Keep driving." And passes back out. And we're in Applebee's one day going to a show, and I'm still early in my traveling clique, and it's me and Lou and Jack and Steve Carino and Franny and Dreamer sitting in Applebee's. And I'm really quiet. I have not said a word. The whole time I'm to myself. We order our food, and I think I ordered a rib basket with rice or something like that. It was like little ribs and rice, something simple. It takes them 45 to 50 minutes to bring our food out.
Wow.
They finally, that's my computer, by the way, closing now. They finally bring our food out. They put everybody's down, and she gets to me and dumps my food right in front of me on the floor. Francine says it looked like I'm a kid that just found out there's no Santa Claus.
Oh, no.
I'm looking at my food, and this is 260 pounds, CW, so my ass is hungry. I hadn't ate all day. And she gets down on her knees, and she looks up at me, and she goes, I am so sorry. I've been having a really bad day. And I scream, no fucking shit. I scream at her, which coming from this quiet church mouse, they start laughing and turn away. And she goes, I can bring some more out. It only takes 5 minutes. I can bring rice out. It only takes 5 minutes. I said, no, you fucking can't, because this took 50 minutes. I said, just give him my fucking chicken wings and just leave me alone. I berate this poor girl. I felt like such an ass afterwards, but I'm sitting there and I'm pissed off just eating my chicken wings with them laughing their ass off at me because I scream at this girl. It's like they didn't never heard this coming from me.
That's awesome, man.
That's just two of them.
That is awesome. So can we make that happen, CW?
Man, you let me know, man. I'm here for you guys. We'll get more stories.
All right,
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Anything in closing, Rico?
No, I just appreciate your time and just thank you for the stories. And I can't wait, a couple months down the road if we can get you again.
Yeah, man. That'd be an honor, guys. Look, thank y'all for having me. Sometimes I get a little long-winded. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of stuff I delve into. But I appreciate everybody that watching this is going to watch this all my years. You can find me through social media, ECW Anderson, everything. I always answer. It might take me a day, but I always answer everybody. And I try to keep everything 100% and keep it real, whether you like it or you don't. That's on you. But I appreciate every one of my fans and people that hated me and the people that listen to it, because without you guys and without the fans, there's no CW.
No, we really appreciate you being 100% real too.
Yeah, thank you. You were probably as real as anybody has ever been on the show. And so what promotions, before you go, what promotion can people find you? And what states are those in?
Right now, Virginia and North Carolina are the primary ones, and my primaries is AML. It's at AML Wrestling. They're also the ones that do WrestleCade, man. If you've never been to WrestleCade, it is Christmas for wrestlers. It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's a 3-day weekend. There's like 5 wrestling shows. We usually get about 15,000 people in traffic. You got 100 superstars, past, present, and future, that are there signing autographs. WrestleCade weekend is fantastic. And the other one is MATW. It's called Mid-Atlantic Territory Wrestling. That runs in Virginia and North Carolina. I'm right down the road this weekend for them. But those are my 2 mainstays right now. And you can find those. And if you go through me at social media at ECW Anderson, you'll always know where I'm at with those.
Awesome. Huge Pop Wrestling fans, thank you for joining the chat. CW, thank you for being on here. Hang out in the lobby real quick.
Sure.
We can talk about it. So, but Rico, thank you. Hang in the lobby. We're gonna give this guy some more respect, and thank you so much.
Thank you.